This week, Pamela Gupta from Trusted AI is with us to discuss trustworthy AI and what that means. No news segment this week. Instead, we've got no less than 6 micro-interviews for you, all hosted by Bill Brenner and pre-recorded at this year's InfoSec World. The first is Getting Real with AI with Nathan Wenzler, Chief Security Strategist at Tenable. The second is Consolidating Security Tools with Mike Campfield, CRO at Uptycs. The third is InfoSec Burnout with Deidre Diamond, founder and CEO of CyberSN. The fourth is Weaponizing Asset Intelligence with Brian Contos, Chief Strategy Officer at Sevco Security. Next is AppSec with Kevin Johnson, CEO of Secure Ideas. And then finally, we are talking to Stacy Kooistra, COO at Dakota State University Applied Research Corporation, about creating more cyber warriors. All that on this episode of Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Cyber threats target digital identities. Do you know who or what is accessing your company's apps, systems, and data? You need to know who's there, who to let in, and who to keep out. And you'll need more than access management to stay secure. You need SailPoint Identity Security. As the leader in identity security, SailPoint can help mature your security resilience while driving efficiencies and compliance for your organization. Start your identity journey with SailPoint's free maturity assessment. Go to securityweekly.com/SailPoint to get your free identity security assessment today. If you work in security or IT and your company has Okta, this message is for you. Imagine a world where only secure devices can access your cloud apps. In this world, phish credentials are useless to attackers, and you can manage every OS, even Linux, from a single dashboard. Best of all, you can get employees to fix their own device security issues without creating more work for IT. The good news is, you don't have to imagine this world. You can just start using Collide. Visit securityweekly.com/Collide to watch a demo today. That's securityweekly.com/KOLIDE.
Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Gumbo Day. This is episode 335, recorded on Thursday, October 12th, 2023. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Herald of Hacking, the Oracle of Offensive Security, Mr. Tyler Robinson. How you doing, Tyler?
Good to see you, Adrian. Miss your face, buddy.
Miss you too. It's been a while. Loving the support for Israel there. I work for an Israeli company, so that is very close to home right now.
I'm sure you're a little short on staff, aren't you?
Yeah. We had a couple coworkers in the reserves that got called up pretty quickly. So it's a lot. It's some of the folks are escaping into work, to take their mind off it, and not everybody can do that. So we're just being very patient with them over there, obviously, with all they have to deal with running in and out of the shelters and everything right now. So hopefully that resolves in a good way soon, but it doesn't seem like it's going to. It seems like that's going to go on for a long time.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Gumbo. It feels kind of silly to talk about National Gumbo Day with all this heavy stuff going on, but sometimes a nice warm bowl of gumbo can take your mind off of things. So it might be.
I thought you said Dumbo the first time.
No, gumbo.
Okay, gumbo. That makes a little more sense. I was trying to figure out in what world Dumbo had its own day, but hey, it's I guess a classic.
It probably does. I look at these every week, these websites that have all the national and international days that marketing teams make up, and some of them are pretty funny. Some of them are very serious. I try and go for things that are a little more frivolous, a little more fun. There's definitely some serious stuff. Like today is also World Vision Day, and today is also National Arthritis Day, I think. And one of my kids actually has early onset rheumatoid arthritis, and has to get shots every couple of months for that. So that's some more serious stuff there, and but gumbo, I'm gonna try and keep my mind on that. Good bowl of gumbo can wash away.
Make me hungry. It's about lunchtime.
A lot of badness, at least for a short period of time. So we get a quick announcement to hear, and then we will interview our introduce our guest and get into the interview. Security Weekly listeners, we are celebrating the milestone of reaching over 1,000 members of our CISO community. The Cybersecurity Collaboration Forum is a one-stop shop for executive collaboration comprised of CISOs across various industries. A part of this growing community of CISOs, join us as a member or technology partner. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/cybersecurity collaboration. All right, and today's topic is trustworthy AI. We're excited to have Pamela Gupta, CEO at Trusted AI, with us today. Pamela is an expert on digital trust, cybersecurity, and AI governance, and has 25 years of experience building cybersecurity programs at Fortune 50 companies. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you had me on your podcast a few weeks ago. You've got your own podcast, which I think is also called Trustworthy AI. Is that correct?
That's right. So, Trustworthy AI, de-risk business adoption of AI. In other words, how can you identify and anticipate risks so that as you go on your AI journey, it streamlines it, makes it more efficient and more trustworthy.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about what that means to de-risk it and get into a lot of the details of how we can make AI more trustworthy and some of the issues of trust that we have with it, because trust is definitely deeply attached to it. And I think it's important to point out that you've been doing this long before ChatGPT made it the topic that everybody was talking about. And the heart of almost every new startup, regardless of what industry the startup is in. I don't care if you're making, if you've got webcams products on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, or it's a B2B enterprise cybersecurity company. Everybody is now talking about it. So you've been doing. How long have you been doing trustworthy AI?
So I'll give you a pretext of my journey has been in the career world, in the professional world, has been creating strategic risk-based security programs, holistic programs. And about 4 years ago, to answer your question, I started taking a look at what is involved in creating security in AI systems, making sure that they are secure and reliable. And I saw there was a lot of rhetoric and published data on how to use AI systems for security, but not that much about how do we instill security into these systems in a holistic fashion. So that started my kind of analysis of what do we need to make these systems secure. And it was a surprise to me. And even after 25 years of, wading deep into security waters, I realized security is not going to be enough to secure AI. And that's why I started taking a look at what else do we need, and taking a look at, what EU had out there in terms of their high-level, expert groups in AI, OECD, and kind of charted out a approach called Trustworthy AI. So that's about 4 years ago. Short answer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so I imagine your world and your focus changed a bit when generative AI, like it was one thing when we had the generative images, but when it started generating text, I think that penetrated a lot more deeply into a lot more industries.
So one thing that I just want to kind of throw a definition out there as to what is AI, right? And why is it so important to know the difference between a traditional software system and how AI behaves? Any AI, whether it is predictive AI or generative AI, is trained on curated data sets or lots of data, voluminous data. And the thing that sets it apart is that it has emergent rules and behaviors that these AI systems will develop without our intervention, right? So based on the data we're feeding it, it's going to come out with rules and recognize, for example, do facial recognition, for example, an example of pattern recognition, making decisions. And that is the predictive AI. Now, how is generative AI different from predictive AI? Is from all these years, we've really been using AI for making decisions or helping make decisions. But the difference is generative AI is actually has the capability to create content, right? So even if we take a deep fake, for example, in predictive AI, we can do facial recognition. In creating content on generative AI, we can create deep fakes, for example. We can create a face, which is very much alike to a, the image that you feed it, or video, or even audio, for example. So I just wanted to make that differentiation between what historically has been software and systems, then AI, predictive AI, and what we were using it for was predictions and using these emergent rules and behaviors for helping us make really efficient and speedier at scale decisions, to now where what we're seeing with generative AI and LLMs is creating content, multimodal content.
How do we get to a point where we begin to build this trust ecosystem around AI? When we're talking about generative, and traditionally we've been very narrow focused with AI around very specific training models and data sets. And now where we're getting this generative and we're getting this mass influx of training data and models that we're leveraging to train this, how do we begin to do that in a trustworthy manner where we're not ending up with tainted models, tainted data, as well as the bias that tends to come out of that because the data that is being pushed in has bias by default? And so how do we begin to leverage this so that we can actually begin to trust some of the output and we don't see all of the bias that's happening, and we don't see some of the problems that are coming from these very, very large data set models and training models that are exponentially getting larger and larger and being fed input that may be malicious, may not be malicious, may just be incorrect? So how do we get to that trust point?
That's a great question, right? What sets it apart, and how can we, firstly, let me answer the question of, and take it from the approach of, can we even do anything right now, right? We have foundational models which have been trained on the internet, right? On mixed data that may be very valid data, may be very mixed, depending on the origin and the lineage of the data. It could be trustworthy, it may not be trustworthy. So we have these foundational models already. If we are going to use them for the usage, let's say, actually is extremely important. What we use it for will determine how much trust is required and what can we do if it is not that trustworthy, the system, right? I think it's a good time to actually talk about what is trustworthy. And if that's good, we can talk about that, or we can come back to define what is a trustworthy.
I would love to know what you think is trustworthy right now. That's great. That's a great starting point.
Okay. So when we're talking about trust, NIST came out with an AI RMF, AI risk management system, to do a couple of things. And there are three disparate elements of that RMF, all right? But let me just focus on what they are using to kind of instill, at least a standardized definition of trustworthiness, because that varies depending on who you ask, all right? So let's just go with the next definition. The way they define it is that these systems should have characteristics of trustworthiness, to more to your point, Tyler. And these are, now brace yourself, all right? So they should be valid and reliable, safe, secure and resilient, accountable and transparent, explainable and interpretable, privacy enhanced, and fair, meaning they should not have bias or they should have harmful bias that is managed. Okay. Now, why do I say brace yourself? These are these areas, each one of them, as you know, from the field of cybersecurity and the fields that we come from. These are all areas which can have a lot of complexity, even in a predictable software system. But when you are talking about systems that are training on data and learning on data, and therefore not at any given point are a snapshot of what in time of what data has been fed into them, and that is continually changing. You can see how all of these can become, also a point in that whole spectrum, a point in the spectrum of how secure and resilient are they. I'm going to I'll tell you a little bit about some of the attacks and the threat models that, we can kind of relate to the cybersecurity world that, the CISOs can find it useful. But these are very difficult and complex areas. Okay. So now, having defined what is a trustworthiness characteristic of an AI system, when we talk about something such as accountable and transparent, that LLM, that generative AI, is kind of failing that particular element, doesn't it? Meaning, it's not the foundational model. You don't have that much transparency into what all is the data that is these systems are built on. Okay, so let's even keep that aside and say, let's say the foundation model is now trained and now you can fine tune it. But one thing we do have to understand that there are how to make it trustworthy. When these ChatGPT, let's take that for example, it's an LLM, large language model, trained on lots, copious amount of data, right? And there was human in the loop, right? They were giving it input and humans were rating it. But we have to know what is the, how do you draw expectation? What is your baseline of expectation? The people who were doing the analysis and saying, okay, yes, this prompt is right, this response is right, they were not highly trained individuals. So if you take that and a system such as ChatGPT and deploy it in a high-risk area where it is interfacing with human beings. So, for example, the eating disorder chatbot that we saw, what happened with it, right? Are you familiar with that that particular incident?
A little bit.
So it's called Tessa, and it was created by the organization that deals with eating disorders. For I don't know the exact name of the organization right now; it's not coming to me. But they had a chatbot that was existing. It had rules-based development around chatbot. That was if you get asked this question, this is what you respond with, and that was what it was working for the longest time, right? I think they had it for at least a couple of years. Interact with humans calling in, people calling in with eating disorders, and it was giving advice on how to cope or whatever, right? Whatever the question may be. Fairly contained, all right? Now, eating disorders is one of the biggest problems in mental health in this country, and it typically it has to do around self-image, and people already have an eating disorder means they are either not eating right or they are really scared to eat because of the effect it can have on the body weight, etc. Few months ago, when they integrated a LLM kind of approach, they made it, they rolled out the system, and they found out that it was actually giving advice about going on a diet or watching your calories, which is just the opposite of what you want to be giving as advice. So in this case, rolling out a system where it's not trustworthy because of the use that you're putting it in, right? It is, firstly, you don't know what it's going to come up with, right? It's going to put 2 and 2 together and give you a different answer each time. In other words, that's highly problematic and not a good business decision, right? So in this case, they had to pull it off, and I'm not sure what damage was done, but it was not a good choice.
But now, isn't that the case for a large number of use cases that AI is being used in, or we'll call it machine learning models? The places that this is getting used in have high volatility, high risk for abuse, and yet we are still moving forward with these because a lot of the push is or training with the testing and the trust coming from data scientists, right? We have a lot of really, really smart people doing this. Oh, take that back. We don't have a lot of them. We have a small number of very smart people doing a lot of this work, but those are data scientists. They don't fully think through all of the sociological, all of the even adversarial. We haven't even talked about, okay, we're deploying these models in different places, and most people don't think about the ways in which hackers abuse things, and yet they're going to get abused because that is the nature of the world, and there are evil people out there doing this consistently, and there will always be evil people doing those things. So how do we get to the point where we have the ability to leverage things like large language models and deploy those in scenarios that are probably going to be hostile, because anything that touches the internet is going to be hostile, and do that in a way that is going to generate things that are useful to humanity without having explicit trust from the general public, which doesn't understand the data science, doesn't understand the risk, and doesn't understand the output and how to delineate. This is just like the news and choosing appropriate sources from your news and understanding, network bias and news bias and reporting bias and all the backgrounds of that. Like, how do we not let that same kind of fate happen to AI and something that could be very useful while still maintaining the trust and getting this into useful technology in a meaningful time frame?
So I'm going to reiterate the point I made earlier again. There is the predictive AI, which is extremely, extremely, useful, and it has been what we have been using for up till generative AI kind of made its, it came explosively on the screen, I would say, or on the scene. So there's a different kind of trust and risk that goes with predictive AI. When it comes to generative AI and the example that we are, just to follow through on this, there are instances where we are seeing a more calculated risk and a measured approach to rolling these out. So if you deploy it in scenarios which are thought through for low impact, for example, low risk, low impact, then this does have the potential to really help make your business or organization be extremely efficient and effective. So I'll give you one example of where I've seen this done publicly. San Jose, they rolled it out, generative AI. They had policies around it. They put their own guardrails, which is very, very important. They put their own guardrails depending on the use case that they are rolling it out for. And they're allowing it to be used in scenarios. For example, of when, in a city you have non-emergency services such as 311. So if you have emergency, you call 911. If you have a question You call 311, for example. Some cities have that. I know New York has that as well. In San Jose, they're using it for the 311, where a service where there is transparency. When people are calling in, they are aware that they're interacting with with humans who or systems, regardless, but they may be leveraging generative AI, so they're aware of that. Plus, they're giving them advice and responses for non-emergency purposes. Now, I'm not saying that that is the only, useful use case. There can be others, but it's going to vary by each company and what they're using it for. Another really good one that I really like is Coca-Cola's marketing campaign. They are using their own content, the content through what exists in their galleries, through the different campaigns, etc. So their own data for generating generative Gen AI marketing campaigns. So it really does depend on as recognizing where we are with the trustworthiness of the systems today, and for how to use it for to lower the negative impact and increase the benefit, right?
How do companies get to that point in today's market? If you're not leveraging AI in your platform, your SaaS, your product, whatever, you're behind the curve for your competitors. However, everybody's jumping headlong into this AI venture because they want to maintain, the persistence with their peers. But at the same time, everyone's doing this really horribly, and if you don't do it, then you're also doing it horribly because you're not doing it. So how do we as a society get to the point where we're having these intelligent conversations? Who do we go to have these conversations? How do you bring people like data scientists or offensive AI researchers in to evaluate how and what you're going to do prior to doing it, or you've already deployed it? What are your next steps so that you can make better or more educated decisions at the executive level for your path down the AI and ML journey, given that you may already be in a position that you're doing that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to know your own business, right? Your own organization, and have that conversation around governance, around, expanding that role, because this is not something CISOs can do, right? This is really important to highlight. This, firstly, I'm finding, and I won't go into that actually, but this is not something a particular group in a company can solve for, okay? So as with anything else, right, in order to really get the value of AI, whether it is predictive or generative, it really does start at the top, right? We hear that for so many things, but when it comes to something that can be a competitive edge, or as you mentioned, the difference between do you stay in business and maintain status quo and perhaps not have a business, as you can see the multiple reports on that. Accenture's published reports on if you don't adopt AI, you risk losing your business altogether in a few years, because to those who have adopted it successfully. But what you will also see are statistics of this is a complex area, and you have to take the right approach, meaning guided and a risk-based approach. Because if you don't, the value that you will get from it may be a percentage of what you would be getting if you did this the right way. So statistics that I'm seeing out there from McKinsey's and the Accenture's, they're the companies that have adopted and are leaders because of adoption of AI. And what's setting them apart is the ones that have taken a holistic, risk-based approach as to knowing exactly what their objectives are, who to involve, right, and creating cross-functional governance teams, which means governance is not a four-letter word, right? It's not something that you do after, or something that is invoked at periodically, but operationalizing governance. And for that, you need cross-functional teams, such as, at the very minimum, you need the management team, the business teams. You need legal, privacy, security. I had actually created a model for this called AI Tips, and it stands for transparency, integrity as in data, integrity as in algorithms or system, privacy and security. But I'm not saying that's the only model, right? There's so many approaches one can take to create that center of excellence within a company, because the reality is, you want to get the value, but there may not be only one area that you want to strive to get value for, right? So there will be either multiple AI systems or AI models or whatever the business is. For example, you could have hundreds or thousands, right? So each one, really scale and to derive the value, not only with existing KPIs, right, but to be able to fully leverage the value of AI. We're seeing companies that are doing it in a systematic approach. They're defining new KPIs that are not possible with the existing ways and methods of operating. So there is immense value, but to answer your question, how do you achieve that? That is through the top-down approach of who needs to be involved. How do we take a look at what is the value for the business? Is this even something that can be solved by AI, or do we, maintain analytics for example? Are we introducing more risk if we bring in AI or generative AI? So that is very much a cross-functional and a center of excellence, the way I see it.
So building on that, you say it needs to come top down, that this needs to come from leadership. Are you seeing organizations creating roles for this, like a chief privacy officer, chief risk, chief trust officer? And is that where it should be owned? Well, I know it's going to vary based on the, how the company is constructed, what kind of company it is. A financial institution is going to be very different from a product-based company, right? But so I guess kind of a twofold question: who do you generally see owning this? And are they that high enough up in the company where they can get some results and make an impact? And who should be owning it?
I will give you one example that I've seen is just phenomenally done right, and that's ADP. I have no connection to them now, so I can, there's no harm in, they have an approach where it's a cross-functional team, and so there's a steering committee, or I call it a center of excellence. That's what we help people do, companies do, is create a center of excellence, which goes across. It's a steering committee. It goes across different teams. Okay. But the way ADP has done it, and I love the way they have approached it, which is it's governance, it's in data and data security and data privacy, and the risk team, right? With the data team. So data team does not own. What I am seeing out there is chief data officers, whether it's a to one or a two-person team or a really large team, that often are being kind of expected to have this kind of holistic approach, or being asked or to deliver on things such as transparency, for example, whereas that's not responsibility set on the right shoulders, because they don't have that. To your point, they don't have that authority to really drive the business, right? We've seen this in cybersecurity world, for example. You're a CISO, you can't drive what the business does, right? You have to be very aligned with the business objectives. So it's, where does it fall? I really think it is a cross-functional enterprise, and depends on the size of the organization. but definitely does need the authority to drive the push and get the right kind of input and participation that cannot come from a single team. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, ultimately, somebody's got to own it, though. The buck has got to stop with somebody, and I would imagine, maybe it would be somebody in privacy or trust, again, depending on the organization, somebody like, I think Twitter used to have like a chief trust officer, and sometimes we see like in social network companies, even security teams tend to roll up to that trust role or to a privacy role or something like that, which is maybe part of the legal organization. But sounds from how you describe it, it sounds like even the frameworks here, we haven't really talked about the NIST risk management framework that they have out for AI. Looks and feels very similar to frameworks for data privacy. For risk and privacy, when it dealing with data, and ultimately, a lot of the risk here does have to do with data. I mean, the example you gave earlier about the eating disorder chatbot, that's a very different risk, but for enterprise use, if this is going to have access to their own data, I do see a lot of parallels to data privacy. So how similar is it to, and how close should those two components be, managing data privacy and risk and AI privacy and risk?
That is just, one component of it, right? So we have not seen anything of this magnitude before when it comes to complexity and the trustworthiness elements that I was asking you to brace yourself for, right? That data and privacy and safety, these are security, transparency, right? Explainability. For example, that can be extremely important in healthcare. If your healthcare automated or intelligence augmentation system, hopefully it's IA, right, is going to give advice. You want to be able to trust, be able to figure out how it's coming to that conclusion, right? To explain, for example, these are not things that belong under a privacy group, for example, right? So where does it belong? It really does belong under a chief risk officer or a chief trust officer, somebody who goes across different groups, but has the authority to kind of get the results that they need. Going back to that, NIST. Let's take a look at the NIST AI RMF, for example. It has at the heart of it. It has the governance piece. And what it does drive is, there's map, measure, and manage, risks. So depending on the context, you then identify what are the risks, And then you have the measure and function, and then you have the box that they have for monitor and kind of, in a very continuous fashion, And the idea is that should apply. Now we're talking about operationalizing governance, That should apply to every part of the AI life cycle, whether you're deploying AI or whether you're creating or designing your own product, or you are implementing, for example, or even for third parties, right, of how they are using your for mission critical or really important functions. What this RMF is, the intention of the RMF, the risk management framework, is to drive those trustworthy elements across each and every part of that life cycle. And I'll tell you what that life cycle includes. In that risk management framework of govern, and like I said, very, very contextual, taking a look at, for example, when we talk about this chatbot, this TESA application, what is the use case is going to be very different if they were deploying it for something else, right? Within the same organization even. So it's very contextual and it's extremely broad, right? To your point and to your question earlier, it's extremely broad. So it really does not belong under the security group or the privacy group or the legal group, because we are talking about things such as fairness. You were talking about security. Security, we haven't even talked about how complex the security task is when it comes to securing the system, because it can come from data poisoning, but it can also come from when the when the models are being developed, when they are being deployed, and then just to go down that security point more, right, in more detail, it's not even things that we have originally been concerned with. So, for example, as security officers, you never had to look at the data lineage, right, or data bias. So, where does it belong? It doesn't. I was talking to a CISO, and he says, "I don't care about where the data is coming from. I'm concerned about the systems and confidentiality." So you see, it's really not a. This is a special group that has the ability to holistically look at, for my organization, if you have that center of excellence or you have a cross-functional team, who does it ultimately report to? Chief Trust Officer, Chief Risk Officer. That would be the right place. And then who are the constituents of that will depend on what is it that you're trying to do. Now, even for something like generative AI, right? You can put a process around it. For example, if there is I'd created an acceptable use policy for a company, right, that had no idea, I shouldn't say no idea, but they had no context of where all it could be used in their company. So in that case, what do we rely on? What do we know that has worked, right? That's going to be that people, process, technology. Who's using it? For what purpose? What technology? In this case, is generative AI. What is who's using it? Whoever is using it has to know these principles. But then the process piece, right? If there is a process around how is it ultimately being used, for example? What are the gated criteria for that? Is it customer facing? If it's customer facing, then what are the filters we need to have? What are the controls we need to have in place in order to make sure that it is customer ready? Now, will that slow things down a little bit and take away that very objective, of where we're trying to get speed? Yes, but in this case, it's not going to at least derail your whole project, and you can maybe still get a lot more functionality and speed within that group than you were able to without it.
Yeah, so just coming back again, your comment about the CISO saying, "Look, data lineage and integrity is not my issue here. It's protecting systems." It's one of the concerns occurring to me here is that if nobody owns this, if it doesn't roll up to a particular person in the org, maybe that position has to be created. Maybe it's a new group that's created, or maybe it's kind of like a hybrid group of existing people and existing organizations in the company. But I worry that if nobody's looking at at the problem holistically, maybe they bring in, they hire you to come in to tell them about some of the risks to help guide them, give them a framework. But I worry about finger pointing about, hey, that wasn't my problem. When the inevitable privacy data leaks, whatever happens with it, misuse, abuse of their product.
Right.
Are you getting that same sense that maybe in a lot of these organizations nobody does own it, and that in itself is a big risk?
I don't know how much I can share, because this is live and I won't go into it into any detail. But what I am seeing is a bit concerning. because I'm saying, for example, we're already using and deploying these systems, and yet on the other hand, we have not even caught up to what the risks are. Forget about even a concerted effort to address them, right? Some of them we are still talking about, this is what we need to do. We need to have these processes in place, or this is this framework, or else the frameworks also are being created on the as we are speaking, right? But we are playing with fire to a degree, because there is no ownership, there is no accountability, and even if there is, it is across different groups. One good way of looking at it is the data organization, the CDOs, for example. They are aware of what models they're building, what systems they're building, and if they are getting pulled into a meeting, or that can be very much be a part of starting point for defining the guardrails that need to go in, and that can be literally be under either a new role. If it's a new role, who does that role report to? Because the most effective one really is to have that chief risk officer or the CFO,
right?
Somebody who has a lot of authority in the organization. That is definitely a one possibility, but cross multi-stakeholder is extremely necessary. That's one thing. Okay. The other is to answer your question about what are some of the current trends, right? The current trends and the current pulse, if I take a look at, take a reading on that pulse, we're talking about, I don't know how to say this, because it's not a good thing. What I'm not seeing is that even if it is security, somebody in the security group, like the CISO, for example, having a real clarity as to what can go wrong. They are focused more on things such as data poisoning, but that's really one part of the puzzle, okay, one part of the threat vector. When you talk about something like generative AI, now what we saw going wrong, right? It's not completely under the CISOs, or even if you track the data or lineage, or know where the data is coming from. Even for a generative AI, OWASP top 10 for LLMs was produced, right? But when I'm talking to CISOs, most of them are not even aware of that or adopting, So I think even if we don't have a cross-functional, holistic approach for your own areas, let's say for ethics, for privacy, for safety, even if people were creating excellence around the areas that they are managing, it would be so much easier for the organization to kind of piece together what the risks are. But right now, it's not even at the point of finger pointing. I think there's a lot of gaps in recognizing what the real risks are.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything is moving so fast, though. I think that's right. Part of the problem here, and it's organizations. Well, I would think we're a little better at moving fast after the pandemic, but this is kind of moving fast in a different way. Shifting how roles and responsibilities and how you do business. It's just it's impacting so many different systems in so many different ways, almost overnight. So it's almost hard to blame organizations, but if they want to profit off it and move that fast, they're going to have to figure out the guardrails and the controls. But yeah, that's all we have time for today, Pamela. Thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today. I think we accomplished our goal, and I think this podcast is going to give folks a lot to think about. In terms of how to implement AI within their, and how to handle it within their company. Anything you want to wrap up with?
I would just say that when we're talking about a holistic approach, it does include regulations as well, but don't wait for regulations. You are aware of what the risks are for your company and what your objectives are. And also the promise of AI, right? There are companies that have leveraged AI for achieving things that were not even possible with their existing KPIs. One can do that, right? There is so much that we can gain that we could not before. It's all possible, but we really need to take a look at it very holistically when it comes to risks and value. So I'll just conclude on that.
Thank you so much, Pamela, again. And stay tuned when we come back. We've got those 6 pre-recorded micro interviews for you that are hosted by Bill Brenner. And also thanks to Tyler for joining me today.
Much love, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. And again, no news segment this week. Just going to have those 6 pre-recorded micro interviews. Our format will be back to normal next week with 2 interviews and a new segment. So come back and see us then.
The cybersecurity landscape is full of single solution providers, making it easy for unexpected cyber threats to sneak through the cracks. That's why Fortra is creating a stronger, simpler strategy for protection, one that increases your security maturity while decreasing the operational burden that comes with it. This is all possible thanks to Fortra's best-in-class portfolio and deep bench of expert problem solvers. Fortra's integrated, scalable solutions help customers face their toughest challenges with confidence. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra, Fortra. If your organization is ready to embrace edge computing, we have good news. The 2023 AT&T Cybersecurity Insights Report provides everything you need to know to get started. In the report, we identify the common characteristics of edge computing. We found edge use cases are rapidly coming online, and we reveal how to secure edge computing. Most importantly, you'll learn how to prepare for your edge ecosystem. Get your complimentary copy of the report today. Visit securityweekly.com/ATT Cybersecurity. That's securityweekly.com/ATT Cybersecurity.
Hi everyone, I'm Bill Brenner from CRA. We are back with our continuing coverage of InfoSec World 2023, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Nathan Wenzler, Chief Security Strategist at Tenable. And if you want to know more about Tenable, by the way, please visit securityweekly.com/TenableISW, as in InfoSec World, to learn more about them. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, you and I were talking a little bit before we went live, and you were talking about how, and it's certainly the hype factor around here right now, AI, you know, the potential for good, the potential for evil, and we talked about what's the practical discussion to be having here. So let's start there.
Yeah, I think it's a really important one, and certainly one I feel like I'm having often these days, because like any new tool or technology that we've seen in the last 10 or 15 years, there's always some amount of hype and bluster about it. It's going to change everything. People are going to lose jobs. We're all going to, cybersecurity is going to go away because these tools will take over, whether it's AI today or ML a couple of years ago, or user behavioral analysis before that, or SOAR platforms, or SIM, or we can go backwards in time to all kinds of tools. But at the end of the day, they are just tools. And I think it's important, especially right now, where AI as a concept has made its way into the non-technical arena, consumer level. People are using it, ChatGPT and the like. So we've moved an idea that's kind of outside of the specialty area of cybersecurity into the broader world. But that also means there is a lot of hype and a lot of buzzwords around it, and I think it gets used incorrectly by a lot of organizations. So taking a step back to really understand that what is the idea, the discipline of AI, well, it encompasses a lot of things. If you look at how universities teach it today and how research groups are working on it, it is about machine learning, and it is about large language models, and it is generative AI, and there is deep learning, and there's all these sort of very specific data processing concepts that are all part of the idea of artificial intelligence. When we think about it that way, it starts to become a little bit easier to see the ways that you can use it in a more practical manner and step away from the sort of the hype of the whole thing to think that it's going to upend an entire industry. And now we can start being a little more practical about, well, how do I make this work better in my organization? How do I leverage the tool or the concept to make my teams more efficient or make us more secure? These are the kinds of things that we need to really kind of start to focus on, rather than just the hype of it's going to tell me what to do from now on.
I do find it interesting. So it seems like in early 2023, a lot of people got the idea that AI was suddenly a thing because they found ChatGPT. But this is something that security companies, including Tenable, have been, working with years.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, definitely I think the ChatGPT phenomena added to spark this hype, and it's
absolutely.
It's just funny how the webs are weaved.
Well, and I think part of it too,
public
it's how we define it, right? I mean, if you think about, just to give you the example, I mean, at Tenable, we've been using machine learning concepts to do essentially predictive analysis for threats. And we see new vulnerabilities come out. We have models based on what we've seen in the past to try to identify, does this new vulnerability that's been identified, what's the likelihood that it becomes fully exploitable with a ransomware kit behind it and absolutely monetized within the next 28 days. And the algorithms and the work, the computational power behind that, it's machine learning. It's AI. It's a form of AI. We don't think of it as in terms of ChatGPT, but it is very much the same kind of concept.
So talk about that. There are practical, and you just started to talk about it. Sure. There are practical applications, and you just mentioned machine learning, generative AI, large language models. Talk about the very straightforward application that should be the goal.
So, generative AI for me, I think, has some of the most interesting possibilities in cybersecurity, because conceptually what we're talking about here is something that translates a lot of data, big open data set, into something that is a little more easy to digest. Now, that might have a natural language engine on the front of it, like a large language model, to help translate it into something that's conversational. But the idea is that we're distilling down massive amounts of data into something that's much more easy to understand. And that's a big challenge for cybersecurity people in general. We are inundated with data. All of our security tools, all of our scans and endpoint tools and firewalls and all the things that we use to manage, it all generates mountains of data. So having the capability to look at these big data sets and leveraging a generative AI model to say, well, here's all these different data points, what's actually happening here? Use it for a form of explainability, so that I can take this really technical data that's hard to understand. It could be in syntax that's code-based syntax that I might not understand really easily, and be able to translate that into a way of saying, well, here is an attack that's actually happening in your environment right now. It compromised this system, which is owned by Nathan. Nathan happens to also be a domain admin, so you have this risk. And it can walk you through essentially translating all that really technical data into something that a SOC analyst or a forensic analyst or someone who's just trying to wrap their head around where am I in danger in the organization really quickly and really easily. And that lends itself into better training models for SOC analysts. We talk all the time about the challenge of hiring new cybersecurity professionals. Well, if I can leverage those kinds of those explainability concepts, I can help a junior SOC analyst get up to speed far faster, because the tools will be able to explain it to them in a more natural way, be able to kind of connect the dots for them in a lot of ways. It's a training process, which means I'm going to get better return on that hire. I'm going to be able to get them into a more full-fledged SOC analyst role more quickly. There's a lot of benefit to that kind of thing. It's not terribly sexy, to be frank, but that idea that we can turn complicated data sets into easy to digest and understandable paragraphs, if you will, means we can make decisions faster, we can get to remediation faster, I can train faster, we literally can make our programs move faster by leveraging those kinds of concepts to translate the data.
So we've been talking about this in the larger big picture sense. Let's narrow the aperture to Tenable and what Tenable is working on, the concepts that you're putting into the tools. Again, it's pretty straightforward where we're going with this, but I want to narrow that aperture.
Yeah, so in Tenable, as you know, we've been in the vulnerability analysis business for 25 years. We created Nessus. We've been in cybersecurity for a long, long time. A lot of us, myself included, we started our careers using tools like Nessus. And we've continued to take that concept of analyzing technology for risk this entire time. Now we do it for anything. Cloud and identities and operational technology, web application, whatever kind of technology you might have, we have capabilities to assess it for risk and for vulnerabilities. But tying that all together is what gets hard. And as we know, as technology landscapes get more complicated, get more interconnected, you can't simply look at a misconfiguration in your AWS platform in an isolated way. You need to be able to understand, well, what does that misconfiguration provide access to? And what does that access provide an attacker? What can they get to behind that? And could they launch attacks against a web application? And could that lead to data loss? And, the attackers will move through your environment however they can. But as defenders, we often don't think that way. So one of the things that we've been doing at Tenable is incorporating some of these generative AI explainability concepts. Because we see the vulnerabilities in all the different technology spaces, we can start to connect the dots in an automated way so that an analyst can sit down, or a SOC person can sit down and say, well, I know I have a misconfiguration here in AWS, how bad is it really? And start to map out an easy way to understand what other risks sort of lay downstream so that we can make good decisions and say, well, do I need to fix this immediately, or can I use this in my normal patch cycle or my normal mitigation cycles? Maybe it doesn't go anywhere disastrous. I might have time. Or maybe that simple flaw actually opens up my very critical infrastructure or my customer databases in a way that I didn't expect. And being able to take all of that different disparate data and talk about it uniformly is something that generative AI models are really good at. They're really good at extracting the commonalities out of all that data and where it all connects. So it's a really kind of powerful way of being able to understand in an organization where you're really at risk, far beyond just the simple, well, it's Microsoft Patch Tuesday and we need to deploy a couple of patches. It really can start to align more with business ideas and say, yeah, we have a lot of patches, but this one can lead to a compromise of a mission critical system. This is really my priority today. And without some of that analysis tools, I wouldn't have seen that quickly. So we're looking at leveraging kind of these AI concepts to make that risk decision-making process happen more quickly, because time is our enemy in all of this. You give an attacker more time, they will find a way. The sooner we identify the problem, the sooner we can remediate the problem, the sooner we can actually reduce the risk in our environments, and that's the goal we're all trying to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all you do, and all my best on all of these efforts. Tenable has a long, storied history, and I look forward to seeing more of what you do on the AI front. But just a reminder to the audience that if you want to learn more about Tenable, please go to securityweekly.com/Tenable ISW. And we'll be back. Hello again, everyone. We are back, continuing our live coverage from InfoSec World 2023. I'm Bill Brenner from Cyber Risk Alliance, and I'm delighted to be joined here by Mike Campfield, who is the CRO of Uptycs. Welcome.
Thank you.
I should note to the audience, if you want to learn more about Uptycs, visit securityweekly.com/Uptycs ISW, as in InfoSec World. And with that, let's begin. Welcome.
Thanks, Phil.
So, this is a new role you're in.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
7 days in, CRO. I very excited about the opportunity. I wasn't in the market to look for a new opportunity, but I've been watching the CNAP and XDR market for a number of years now, and a lot of really exciting things have happened in the market, but I believe the best is yet to come.
So, take me through what Uptycs is about, what, for you as the newly minted CRO, the mission is.
Yeah. So CNAP, the last P is a platform.
Yep.
And when you think about all of the different capabilities that type of solution has, you think about visibility, detection, response, there's a pretty broad capability set with those players. A lot of people have been talking about the space. Left of boom has been mostly CNAP right now, where you're doing preventative compliance type use cases. I believe the biggest thing yet to come, and why I'm so excited about the space, is the right of boom, the detection and response, getting the threat actors while they're in your systems, and so from a CRO perspective, I'm planning for massive growth. The space has gone through massive growth over the last few years. There's been some big unicorns and bigger than those. I hate to use that word, but when you think about the space has gotten a lot of investment, as well as done quite well from a valuation and a performance perspective. But again, I believe that the growth days are...
It's a saturated market.
Yeah.
So let me ask you then, let's talk about that, because we were talking before we went live about the consolidation mindset. Talk about where Uptycs stands on that. And
yeah, so from a technology perspective, Uptycs is the first unified platform to bring in the endpoint along with the cloud security. So, every solution starts a different way. There's some solutions in the CNAP market are really more on the visibility and compliance side. Other people are more on the detection and response and the cloud security side. We've built this from the ground up to work together from the endpoint to the cloud and really beyond.
Very good. Now, if people want to come and learn more about Uptycs here at InfoSec World, where can they find you?
Sure, we're right in the booth, right when you walk in the door. We have a fantastic experience.
I saw the comics.
Yes, we call it our nerd wall. It's super fun. People really love the variety of things that we provide there for that. But the best part is obviously the technology.
Talk about the comics though, and how it relates.
Yeah, so we believe that when you're doing security, you're usually doing 3 or 4 jobs. Correlate that to superhuman. And when you think about the job of an incident responder and anybody in security, you're really protecting every part of our society, right? And I actually take that quite personally, being in security for a very long time. I love the mission mindset of that. And we believe that you actually don't have to be a superhero to protect your estate if you use our platform.
So CNAP.
Yes.
Break down the components. I know what CNAP is.
Okay.
For those in the audience who maybe aren't as familiar, unpack it, please.
Yeah, sure. I think the CNAP market, where it really first started taking off, is in the CSPM side. So you're looking at how you visualize all of the assets across your estates, how you secure the levels of protection that are on those. So you're looking at compliance scenarios and threat scanning and vulnerability management. Then really, and this is more on the right side of boom, the cloud workload protection side of the house. So Kubernetes, looking inside of your hyperscalers, AWS, Google, Azure, and being able to find threat actors that might be taking advantage of either the misconfigurations that you might have found, but also might have broken in a different way, and being able to catch them before they create too much havoc is what we can do. And then the last piece, and I think this is another exciting evolution of CNAP, is the entitlement management part of it, and really bringing the identity and the access control of really all of your devices from the endpoint to the cloud is where the puck is going. And you wrap that all up in the platform, and those are the major components. So it's really the visibility, the detection, and then the response all put together. That's really CNAP in its entirety.
In kind of a nutshell.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So the big topics in InfoSec World this year, there's a lot of discussion around AI. There's a lot of discussion about the cloud, of course.
Sure.
What kind of conversations are you having with people in terms of they come to the booth, they're talking to you. What are they telling you in terms of what their needs are?
Well, I mean, this was the year of, kind of the natural language AI part of the house, right? Where you can ask natural questions to a machine. It'll spit out natural answers for you, and that's actually a very core component of our solution. We have a part of our solution called Ask Uptycs. So in just natural language, tell me what my vulnerabilities are, tell me what, what's misconfigured. We're able to bring that back to you naturally. We also build in AI into our threat detection, so being able to do a baseline of all of your environments and see where those things are different and where the deltas are, and then finding where those changes might have happened are key uses of AI inside of our platform. Just a couple of examples. If you also think of a big trend, it's also about consolidation, right? It's no secret that the market has slowed down from an investment perspective, and people are looking at platforms, right? So, best in class is still good in a lot of security organizations, but also people want to have a comprehensive platform, not only from investment in the vendor, but also to streamline their operations. And being operationally more efficient is a key trend that we're also seeing inside of this week.
All right, fantastic. Well, have a great rest of the week, and thank you for joining us. Pleasure talking to you.
Nice to meet you, Bill.
Again, to the audience, if you want to learn more about Uptycs, securityweekly.com/Uptycs ISW. Well, hi again, everybody. I'm Bill Brenner from CRA, and this is our continuing coverage of InfoSec World 2023. I'm delighted to be joined by Deidre Diamond, who I have known for many years, just through the wider industry. And Deidre is the founder and CEO of CyberSN, founder of Secure Diversity. And if you want to know more about her organization, please visit CyberSN ISW, as in InfoSec World. So welcome.
Yeah, it's so good to be with you.
So you had a talk. Tell us about your talk.
I did. So the title of my talk is We Need a Compliance Control for Retaining Cyber Talent.
Yep.
And the reason I'm calling for this control is because for the last 9 years, I have been intimately privy to the data that is burnout and job hopping, not hopping, because that's ridiculous to say, job changing. We have retention issues, and that's a national security issue. These aren't just jobs. These are security jobs. Of course, they're cybersecurity jobs, which is security jobs. And I don't get it. I don't get why we don't have the budgets for succession planning and for career development, and so I know that nothing happens with change unless there's some sort of regulation, fines. I mean, I've been in the business since 2007. Nobody cared about vulnerabilities until PCI started fining.
That's right.
So, okay, I'm done talking about this.
I remember those Wild West days.
Yeah. I was there. I was selling Rapid7 software as the first VP of sales, and I was so thankful when PCI started fining because that's when people cared. And so I've learned, I'm now in my 50s, I've learned that we need, help sometimes to do the right thing. And so, if you look at the number one reason people leave their employer, it's
churn and burn.
Yeah, it's not a program to develop and retain me. And yes, I'm here to do and be of service to the company. But what happened to that also came with training, development, succession planning, as it did with most professions until recently. We're in this seems to be this era of disposability has now come to jobs and people, not just materialism. And I don't like it. And I think that this is the one industry I could probably get a compliance control done in, and maybe it'll then help us with all other, but it's not smart what we're doing, this lack of investment in this.
Yeah, I mean, we at Cyber Risk Alliance, we do a monthly survey. We call it the Cybersecurity Buyer Intelligence Report. And the focus is on a specific topic every month. But whatever the topic, in every survey, this is what comes back as the big challenge. The difficulty finding the right hires and then in keeping them. And it's usually within the context of, well, it's easy to job hop and make more money. But what you're talking about, the burnout factor, that's real. And we have seen it cost lives in this industry. I'm thinking, people like Mike Murray. And so I applaud you for taking on the torch for this.
Yes, and I'm definitely not putting it down. There's a group of us that are, working on this framework now. To your point, I want to talk about this a little bit. I talked about this in my talk, this point of people thinking people are leaving their jobs because of money. It is not the case. And let me show where money comes involved. So, people are getting reach outs from recruiters every day, every single day. And so what's the day that made the return? And the day that, what's the day that made that person pick up the phone or, shows how old I am, or respond to the email, right? It's not the day that they thought about their income. It's not that. However, when somebody leaves a company, they're not going to tell HR the real reasons. They don't even want to tell their own boss the real reasons. I mean, we're not in a society that supports telling the real reasons. You need references, you need networking, you need, right? You're not going to do that. So what's the best thing to do? You're going to say money. And guess what? You did get more money than you're making at that company, because when people make job moves, it's just expected. I mean, there is a risk factor. It could be the same problem. It could be people that are worse. It could be, poor culture. There's so much risk. The older we get, we know those risks could be there. And so, but in general, people do get raises when they move. And so they're not lying when they say, I got more money. Hard to pass up that money. And it also doesn't mean that the real reason they took that call or that in-mail that got that job or that person that called them about it, it's not the money. It's not. So I think that is something that's clouding this conversation, because there's also the conversation that we're short 500,000 people in the US and 2.5 million worldwide, and that also plays into this. It's not possible to retain. There's a shortage, and you can move and make a ton more money like the snap of your fingers. And it's like, really? Do you hire people that move all the time because of money? No, that's not. So you're not going to do that. And the shortage is mostly, well, yeah, there's a shortage because it takes years to develop the skill. People. And so there's all these topics that are, it's almost like, headline news. It's the buzzwords. It's all that's distracting from what's really going on. And there's two things that's really going on. There wasn't, until literally what we're doing, a common language around cybersecurity jobs, what they are, not titles. Titles aren't the job. A CISO could be 100 different profiles. A security engineer could be 30. An analyst could be 25, it's ridiculous to use titles to suggest that is a way to, understand this talent pool. And then it's literally, succession planning based on career development that was a concept in capitalism from the beginning, and somehow it's disappeared. And so because these people, all of us, are a part of national security. It seems to be that, we need to solve this immediately. And the budgets aren't there for it. You know that. The budgets aren't there for training and developing and retaining people. And yet everybody knows when you don't retain people, you lose. And so there's this, what's going on, this lack of clarity. So I'm bringing the facts and the clarity to the conversation. And I think, I'll tell you this. When I first did this talk about 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was a GRC conference in Vegas. And the first thing I said was, I want to know, a poll, before we start this talk, how many of you think we need a compliance control for retaining talent? How many do you think? What do you think the percentage was?
I don't know, 25, 30?
25, 30? No, guess what? 100%. I had 200 and something people in the room. I had a couple of people 100 people online. I'm not kidding. It shocked me beyond belief. I thought by the beginning would be different than the end of my talk. And to just prove this point, the day before I covered for another speaker that couldn't make it. I did jobs data, all the jobs data that we have. And I said, before I start speaking, how many of you think job searching and matching is a broken system? And what percentage do you think said that?
100.
63. So fascinating.
These trick questions you're
I'm tricking you because we all think we know this, like right? But people want the retention piece solved, and that's my point. I love it's a trick question because it shocked me that 100%. When do we ever all agree on the same thing? I mean, seriously, 100%. Today in my talk, exact same thing. And I asked, and I shared that story, and I got the same percentages that you were saying, what people thought people would say. And so that's fascinating, right? And so when you see it at scale, like I do, you'll be out here fighting. So I'm going to make sure you all see it.
Well, I look forward to seeing how it goes and what comes next. But again, I applaud you for carrying the torch for this vital issue. So again, folks, Deidre Diamond, the founder and yeah, that's twice I've done that. You could tell I've been doing these all day because I start tripping over the tongue. But I also have a laid-back approach to these. So anyway, Deidre Diamond, founder and CEO of CyberSN. And again, if you want to learn more about them, securityweekly.com/CyberSNISW. We'll be back.
The Security Weekly News is live on Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 o'clock Eastern Time most every week. I try to scan and produce a quick look at some major stories to help you keep up with what's going on in and around the industry in a short format. Myself, Jason Wood, and other guest commentators provide greater insight every week. I'm Doug White, and I hope that you will look for the Security Weekly News in all of your favorite podcast catchers and subscribe for the latest content.
Hi, and welcome to InfoSec World 2023 in Orlando, Florida. I'm Bradley Barth with the Cyber Risk Alliance and Security Weekly, back with you with another interview here on the show floor. And my guest sitting next to me is Brian Contos. He is Chief Strategy Officer at asset management company Sevco Security. Brian, thanks so much for being here today. And as always, let's jump right into things. I know you just had a presentation earlier this morning, which I got a chance to view, all on the concept of asset intelligence. So let's start with that. Define asset intelligence. What types of information falls under the category of asset intelligence, and where are some of the biggest gaps for organizations in their asset intelligence?
Sure. So asset intelligence, asset management, chasm, these are terms that have been around for, probably since the beginning of the cybersecurity industry. But when I think of asset intelligence, what I like to do is say, consider your devices, your laptops, your servers, the applications that run on them, the users that interact with them, the vulnerabilities they might have, and that device might be on site, it might be in the cloud, and then correlate that all together. So don't think of an asset as a single machine, think of it as all the interrelated parts that make up that machine and everything it communicates with.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the factors that can make asset management and asset intelligence so difficult for an organization to aggregate and meaningfully interpret.
Yeah, so scale is definitely a big issue today. If we talk about cloud assets and BYOD assets and XIOT assets, in addition to all the apps and identities that fall into the equation, just handling the volume can't be done the way it used to be, which sadly was with spreadsheets and other archaic approaches.
Yeah.
So today, organizations say, well, scale's an issue, but also a big problem is considered deduplication. And if I pull in information from a CrowdStrike and an Automox and a Lumio and Microsoft Active Directory and Tenable and all this, I just say, okay, here's all my assets, I might have massive duplication. Mm-hmm. So deduplication, which then leads to correlation analysis, that's really where people want to get to. And without automated tools, it's almost impossible to get to that point.
Yeah, plus ecosystems are just becoming a lot more complex, right? A lot of organizations using all sorts of different types of devices, endpoints, things like Internet of Things and connected devices make things complicated. The era of BYOD particularly exploding with remote workers, all of that I have to think contributes as well, right?
And that's right, Bradley. And what you find is XIOT devices, whether it's a voice over IP phone, digital door lock, security camera, there's about 3 to 5 of those per employee in an organization. Mm-hmm. So 10,000 employees, 30 to 50,000. That's just things, right? Then we have all the cloud assets that could get spun up and spun down every minute or so. Mm-hmm. All the identities. It's a lot of complexity. Yeah. So what we find at Sevco is being able to boil all that asset information down into what are actually the tangible assets, what are the interrelated parts, and what's their state and presence. And what I mean by that is presence is telling me, yes, I have a security control on this device, I have a patch management control, it's in Active Directory, that's the presence, but the state further goes on to say, well, your security control hasn't communicated with the management console in 3 weeks, or it's 8 versions too old. Right? So now I know presence and state, so I can actually measure the security prioritization of my devices predicated on knowing all that rich asset intel, which I wouldn't get just by looking at a single solution that's not correlated.
Yeah. In your presentation, you talked about the idea of that organizations need to move away from assumption-based asset intelligence and move toward more evidence-based asset intelligence. Explain a little bit what you meant by that.
Yeah, so assumption-based is what we've all done, quite honestly, for the last 20 years when it comes to asset intel. I assume my security controls are all working. I pray that everything's deployed accurately. I hope that I'm not missing a specific control on a specific device. And the reason we did that is we didn't really have any good ways of not approaching with an assumption-based. It was just very manual, very chaotic, and very error-prone. Evidence-based flips that on its head. It says, look, instead of assuming these things, let's have evidence. Let's actually know empirically what's running. If it's running, is it up to date? If it's up to date, is it actually working across all of your security, all of your IT and all of your GRC controls. And this is great for security, of course, but it's also great for IT operations, for things like licensing rationalization, understanding how I have observability across all my assets, and finally GRC. You look at PCI, you look at CIS, you look at NIST, OWASP, they all talk about know what you got, know how it's running, and know if it's secure. That's always step one. But we've assumed that stuff has been working for 20 years. Now we have evidence what is and what isn't working.
Yeah. All right, let me play the role for a minute of the not particularly savvy business CEO that is hearing some of this and saying, oh, I mean, I get it. It's important to have visibility into your assets, but what's the harm of one rogue endpoint or device here or there? What's the worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen?
Well, that's exactly what the bad actors want you to do. They're counting on you being passive. They're counting on you saying, what worked for us the last 20 years is going to work for the next 20 years, and that's putting you in this very precarious position. I would also say to that individual, look, you've spent millions of dollars on CMDB, SIM, SOAR, ticketing solutions. Wouldn't it be great if the asset intelligence that flowed into them was accurate, that you had a source of truth, so you're making decisions predicated on real evidence-based data, not garbage in, garbage out. I think you'd say, hey, if I'm spending millions of dollars, I'd sure like to make sure it's based on real-time, actual quantitative and qualitative metrics that are measurable, and not just garbage.
Yeah, and that was part of your presentation as well, that you were talking about that quality asset intelligence can feed into this bi-directional architecture that can help you improve your overall enterprise security intelligence. So just explain maybe a little bit more about what some of the benefits can be there. What can you learn from having that kind of an architecture?
Well, what's really neat about this architecture, first off, is it's super easy to deploy and extract this data. So because everything's API-based, it's cloud-centric, you can make API calls to dozens and dozens of devices, get up and running in less than an hour. And that's great. You do analytics, queries, reports, so you've got this solution. But then it actually feeds upriver into all those other solutions, like we mentioned, CMDB, SIM, SOAR, ticketing, so on and so forth, that you're spending a lot of money on. So it's that bidirectionality of asset intelligence, that need for everything in your environment to have a good sense of truth, that makes this so critical and, quite honestly, so foundational to security, IT ops, and GRC.
Yeah. Are there any particular devices or endpoints or assets that, in your experience, have proven to be especially elusive to organizations, something that's not quite so visible or maybe just kind of gets outright forgotten?
You know, something that's interesting is that everybody's familiar with their EDR. Whether they've got CrowdStrike or Cylance or Carbon Black or whatever solution they have, they go, okay, I know I have endpoint security. What we find is that organizations have both too many and too few licenses for these devices at the same time. And what I mean by that is they might have purchased 50,000 seats of CrowdStrike, and that's great, but when we find out and we correlate everything with Active Directory, we find out you have 65,000 solutions, of which 60,000 could be running CrowdStrike and only 50,000 are. So we see a lot of gaps. And what this helps do is, one, ensure that, yeah, I've got security controls, but two, for the folks actually writing the check, they want to make sure that what they're buying is actually getting used. It doesn't help anybody, maybe the vendor, but it doesn't help anybody usually to have excess licenses sitting in a drawer. Yeah. And that's one that people intuitively get. I have a bunch of EDR, but when they start seeing the gaps and it's visualized, like, wow, I had no idea we had 200 systems sitting in that building that lack any kind of security, and if just one of them is compromised, we're completely at risk.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, during your presentation, you also talked about some of the most beneficial use cases for asset management. So talk about those a little bit. What facets of your business or organization can really get a nice turbo boost from having a quality asset intelligence program? Yeah, and it's funny, there's probably about 20 or 30 different use cases off of the top of my head across security and IT ops and GRC. But security, one of them that's really interesting, and it just sort of started popping up maybe the last couple of years, is called vulnerability hunting. Now, it's not threat hunting. We're all familiar with threat hunting. It's an incident response type role. It's reactive, where you say,
I believe a bad actor's gotten access. I want to see what damage they've caused, what information they pulled out, looking for IOCs and TTPs. Okay, that's known. Vulnerability hunting is proactive. Before the bad actors get in, I want to get a sense of where are all my critical assets, what are the risks on those assets, are they running end-of-life software, do they lack patches, is there no more extended service contract? But then back to what I said before, presence and state, maybe I have the EDR deployed, but not patch management. Maybe I have patch management, but not segmentation. Maybe one of those tools is you support N-2, so it could be 2 iterations old, but this one's 10 iterations old. And these guys over here haven't communicated in over 6 months. Well, these are all factors I need to know so I can quickly take this massive picture of assets, prioritize and say, hey folks, today, these are the 10 assets that we have to go address right now. There's another 300 we have to address, but these are the ones that are super critical because maybe they have customer sensitive data, we're going to go through a PCI audit, whatever the case might be. And that really helps. So I really like the idea of vulnerability hunting. From the network ops side, it really comes down to rationalization. Just give me visibility. Let me know what my licenses are, and let me optimize all those investments in those SIEMs, SOAR, CMDBs. And then from GRC, the biggest one is continuous monitoring and reporting. I don't just want to have this data, but I want to be able to placate auditors, if you will, to say, hey, if you want to check where we are, our state of security, here's the report. Here's a export of everything that you just asked for, and you can get it in real time, not a 6-month exercise to go fact finding and do surveys. It's just there. And man, that makes every kind of regulatory mandate so much easier to handle.
We have just a little over 3 minutes left, and in that time, I'll throw out one last question to you, which is, in this particular area or field of cybersecurity, you kind of hear about a category of solutions called asset management solutions. Other people say there's a category of solutions, attack surface management solutions. Are they all kind of just cousins of each other and similar, or is it kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other? How does attack management versus attack surface management differ, or how do they overlap?
Yeah, the terms are always used interchangeably. I think asset management might be the legacy term, cyber, asset, attack surface management, whatever the new flavor is. We just call it asset intelligence at Sevco. But fundamentally, the approach today is, I don't want to install agents. I have to have a cloud-native solution. It has to be highly scalable, and it has to be super easy, not just to deploy and use, but to get value from. A lot of the legacy tools, they would take quarters, years to deploy, and they were very error-prone, very manual, and you had to do a lot of corrective sort of processes to get them to work. Nobody has time for that today. Just because with the number of assets, it simply can't scale, and the impact it puts on your team, it means that they can't focus on other more strategic goals. They shouldn't have to sit around counting assets all day. So I believe this new generation, if you will, asset intelligence that's coming out, it's all about being scalable, it's all about being easy, and it's all about being fast and effective.
Great. Well, I appreciate you leading us through this discussion today, Brian. For more information about Sevco, please visit the Security Weekly website, securityweekly.com/Sevco, SEVCO ISW. Thanks again, Brian. Really appreciate it. Brian Contos from Sevco Security. Thanks for joining us. And to everyone else, please keep watching for more live and on-demand content from InfoSec World 2023. I'll see you all later.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Brenner, Senior VP of Audience Content Strategy at CyberRisk Alliance, parent company of InfoSec World. And day one of InfoSec World, a lot of great energy today, and I'm delighted to be joined by Stacy Kooistra, and he's Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel for Dakota State University Applied Research Corp. Welcome.
Thank you, Bill. It's nice to be here.
So, busy time when we look at the threat landscape, when we look at things going on the policy side. Talk about what your core focus has been of late?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, and thank you for having me. So I guess where I would start in the threat landscape and the policy is really talk a little bit about what we're doing in South Dakota. So Dakota State University is one of 6 state universities, and it really has a cyber emphasis. It has 12 different programs, a lot of operations, a lot of things like that, and the university's goal, of course, is to produce highly qualified graduates, and often they graduate and they head to the coast, right?
Right.
And so part of our goal with the project that I'm involved in, the Applied Research Corporation, is an extension of the university, and it's basically focused on taking the applied research lab where they do that federal government contracting and transitioning it off the state roles and into a corporate setting. Again, tax exempt by virtue of its affiliation with the university, but to basically increase efficiency and nimbleness to help us provide cyber warriors for the cyber threat landscape.
So talk about that, creating cyber warriors in light of where we're at right now, and if we look at topics being discussed in InfoSec World right now, AI is a big one, the for good and for not good parts.
Yes.
We're talking a lot this week about ransomware, about cloud security. So how do you prepare them?
Well, there's really a power triad that we're focused on that involves cyber, but also AI, and an increasing focus on quantum computing. And so, and I think about it from the cyber warrior context, maybe using that term a little loosely, but I'm still active in the military as well. I'm in the Air Force side, and so I have the opportunity in a part-time capacity to serve militarily, and then on the civilian side to help stand up this corporation where we can take some of these graduates and really take almost a cradle-to-grave opportunity from our recruiting and admissions basis on the university side, bring them in and then keep them there, and at times send them to the East Coast, to the West Coast, wherever that may be, to develop a network, to develop the qualifications, but really building on that foundation of Dakota State's programs in computer science, AI, and artificial and cyber.
Very good. In terms of some of these topics that I just rattled off, where are your biggest concerns right now?
Well, I would share a lot of the concerns that are frequently talked about, right? AI, like you mentioned, using them for bad, using them for good.
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay, yeah, I would say staying ahead of that, staying ahead of our adversaries, right? I mean, militarily, there's a common threat we talk about is China, right? Very, very capable. But the reality is there are pockets throughout the world in other places where you wouldn't expect them, where they're very, very good. And so it's one of those where we are really just focused on the collaboration with the 3-letter agencies, with the Department of Defense, to ensure as much efficiency and seamlessness as we can, not only in the training and the education, but also the employment.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but this morning's opening keynote, Rachel Wilson from Morgan Stanley, she spent a lot of time talking about North Korea and how North Korea essentially has made the theft of intellectual property from corporations part of their GDP.
Yeah.
When you think about the threat actors that and the cyber army that you're preparing.
Yes, sir.
Why not?
We'll take it.
I mean, let's call, But when you look at those things, does that match up with where your chief focus is? You just mentioned China. Russia always comes up, and always has, and always will. But when you look around the world, where are you getting the most heartburn?
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, in common military parlance, what you hear is the 3 things, right? China, China, China. But your point is well made, whether it's North Korea, whether it's Russia, whoever it is. In our little piece of the world, what we're working on doing is providing and filling a need that the Department of Defense in particular has. And so, our lane, our mission is to produce those cyber capable research engineers, so that when proposals are requested from the Department of Defense, RFPs are submitted, that we're there prepared to fulfill them. And to fulfill them, as prime contractors, as subcontractors. A lot of that will be driven by, big Department of Defense, big Army, big Air Force, big Navy, and as they identify the needs, and as we continue to broaden the capabilities and the programs that we have at Dakota State University, and we can transition them into the corporation, that we can meet those needs, and we can meet them in a cost-effective, timely manner.
Very good. Now, one of the things that I spend a lot of time focusing on in my conversations as developer of content here at CRA is we get a lot of feedback about a skills gap, a talent shortage, and you're right in the thick of it, trying to get people trained for this work. When you hear people talking about a lack of skilled security help, how does that square with what you're working to instill in the training that you're overseeing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would tell you that when I reflect on the project, or when we think about the project, it's driven by a vision, right? And Dr. Jose Marie Griffiths is the president of Dakota State University, and she has an excellent relationship with Governor Noem. And the Applied Research Corporation is a public-private partnership, and it is funded to provide secure space, right? In South Dakota, there is already a SCIF that exists on campus in Madison at Dakota State University, and this funding is to provide an additional larger facility in Sioux Falls, which I understand people may not know where those are, but they're within 45 minutes of each other, and so the vision is to fill those skills gaps. And again, Dr. Griffiths is one. She's one of the top 50 women in the world in the AI space. And so she is really dialed in. We have an excellent board of directors that's engaged in DC to be monitoring where those skills gaps are.
Yep.
And as a smaller university in South Dakota, there's a nimbleness that comes with that as well, to be able to develop the programming to meet those needs, and again, to put them to work as promptly as we can once they're available and trained. And continuing their graduate work up to the PhD level in the cyber operations program they have.
Very good. Well, I wish you every success.
Well, thank you.
And hope to talk to you again.
Anytime. I appreciate you having me.
We're always doing e-summits and webcasts, and would love to have you back for one of those.
Oh, well, I enjoy this kind of thing, and it's easy to talk about stuff that you believe in, right? And I believe we're on the right track. So thanks for having me.
Terrific. All right, everybody. Until next time, be well. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Brenner from Cyber Risk Alliance, and we're back with our continuing coverage from InfoSec World. And I'm here with an old friend, Kevin Johnson, CEO of Secure Ideas, /Secure Ideas InfoSec World, if you're tooling around the InfoSec World site. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm exhausted.
Yesterday, I was looking at your shirt, and I was like, wow, clearly he buys his own clothes.
No, that shirt was awesome.
If you're someone like Wolfgang Gerlich, I know his wife buys his clothes.
His wife buys his clothes.
But that shirt, that was all you.
Did you not see what we did with those? We sold those and sent the proceeds to St. Jude.
Awesome.
That St. Jude's an amazing organization, and greedy capitalist. We wanted to get our branding out. So yeah, Hawaiian shirts with professional evil all over it.
But you've done some good, so.
I try.
Well done. So you, sir, are running for the OWASP board.
Oh, God, yes.
Tell me about that.
The global board for OWASP. Well, I mean, and I think you said it earlier, right? I'm full of rants. I have ranted about OWASP for a decade. We have an organization that is used by hundreds of thousands of people a day. It drives security controls and decisions around the world and has less than 7,000 paid members. They can't fund what they're doing. They can't figure out what they're doing. And so I decided to put my time where my mouth is, and a whole bunch of people said, Kevin, stop ranting, try to fix it. And so I'm running for the board. And I'm already frustrated because there's 10 great candidates. I'm not frustrated with them. And as of right now, 4 of the candidates have actually bothered to fill out the things, and very few people have gone to look to see who they should vote for. And I'm amazed at the apathy, I think is the word. So yeah, I'm running. The election, my understanding is you have to be a member by September 30th, and then you can vote or something like that. And the ballot, if I win the election, then I'm going to see what I can do to help. And if I don't win the election, I'm going to see what I can do to help, because we need to fix it.
What do you want to do to help?
I'd like us to focus on actually embracing membership. There's 3 legs that make up OWASP. There's the projects that everybody knows about, right? And we saw just recently 2 of the flagship projects left because of problems with the organization. So you have the projects, then you have the chapters, and then you have the members. And everything's free. Like, don't get me wrong, like OWASP's openness, right? Like, let everything out there. But the projects need funding, the chapters need support and funding, and we can't do any of that if we don't have membership. And I talk to people all the time, and they don't even know why they would pay, whatever it is, $50 a year or something like that, right? And it's like, okay, well, are you a member? No, I'll ask you, are you a member?
Nope.
Right, why not?
Because I'm busy.
Because I'm busy, right? Exactly, right? The question, and so as a board member, my goal is to give people reasons to be members.
Right.
Right? And what I'd rather is corporations become members. Not because I don't want individuals. I think individuals are the lifeblood, but individual memberships aren't going to move the funding needle. Right? And so if we find organizations like Secure Ideas, like CRA, whatever, that fund membership into the organization without trying to control the message, right? Like, this is not a marketing budget. This is, let's support something that actually helps security. So that's it. And if we don't do it, in my opinion, I don't think OWASP, a lot of people are like, oh, OWASP is going to die, it's dead. That's not going to happen.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. But what we're going to have is we're going to continue to have an ineffective, uncommunicated security assistance, right? And OWASP is beautiful. It's been, 20 years that it's been giving out free information to developers and testers and security people, and yet...
They provided a ton of value.
Exactly. And yet, like I said, we have less than 7,000 paid members. That's ridiculous. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do.
So I'm going to pivot now.
Okay.
But I'm glad we got to talk about
So
this.
am I.
Put your Secure Ideas hat on.
Ooh. I don't wear hats.
So we are here at InfoSec World, and people are talking about AI. They're talking about, North Korea. They're talking about, Microsoft challenges.
Yes.
What is the thing that you're most focused on while you're here?
Do you want to know what I'm most focused on?
Besides
I think
getting
it's important.
customers.
Well, yeah. I'm a greedy capitalist. I want to sell pen tests, right?
Of course.
But what are you asking? What I'm most focused on, or what people are most asking me about?
I think what people are asking you about is probably the most appropriate thing.
Okay, so people
and all of this is through the prism of app security.
Yes. Because
that's your sauce.
It's what most people know me by, right? Yeah, and APIs, right? I think Jason Gilden's my business partner. He's way smarter than I am, and except in picking business partners, and so he and I were talking about this morning, and everybody's talking about APIs. Everybody's worried about APIs. As a matter of fact, Jennifer, one of our senior consultants, presented yesterday on attacking and securing APIs. And what blows my mind, and this I'm gonna pivot to what I'm actually more worried about, right? What blows my mind is I have people walk up to the booth. They say to us, "What do you do for API security?" And we're like, "Okay, what do you want to have done for API security?" And most of the people who are asking the question don't actually understand the and I'm not trying to make fun of them, right? They don't actually understand the technology they're asking about.
And that's why they're here. So
right.
It's all appropriate.
And that's why I say I'm not making fun of them. I think it's awesome, right? But what I think we need to do is we need to get back to fundamentals. We need to understand the things we're worried about. Why are we worried about APIs? Okay, that's easy. We're worried about APIs because they're being exposed all over the world to help people communicate better, to get input back in. Yet, most of the APIs that are being exposed to the internet today were written by somebody who didn't think about security for whatever reason and never planned on that being exposed to the internet. It was an internal system. Worked for us, let's expose it, right? So I think that for me, that's the biggest topic people are looking at, right? A lot of talk about AI, but most of the talk about AI doesn't fall into the AppSec or pen testing space, right? Yeah, we use it, we leverage it.
Do you try to pivot the discussion that way, though, when it comes up?
No. I'm not real good. I'm a horrible marketer. I probably should not be the face of the company at the booth, but I tend to not try to drive the person sitting there talking to me to a topic, mainly because we can help with lots of different things. I'd rather know what their concerns are. And I think everybody here should be that way, and I think a lot of the vendors, I think Information Security World does a really good job of bringing in exhibitors that know what they're talking about, that actually are providing benefit. Not all of them, right? You got those crappy ones. But, you want me to name them? No. You've got the ones, they really know what they're talking about. We should be talking to people here. I come here and have a booth. Yes, I want to sell stuff. But more importantly, I want to know what I should be trying to help fix for my clients. And getting this exposure to this many people saying, this is what my concerns are, this is what my organization's focused on. That's good. I'm happy with it. I think I rambled a little bit away from your topic, but you know.
I mean,
it's me.
How is that different from any other day?
Look, man, my job is to just babble. So.
Well, I'm glad you came in here to babble for a few minutes.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Johnson. We'll be back with our continuing coverage at InfoSec World.